All right. Hey, you got Glenn and Jared here. We got the Redacted podcast, and we're on episode 9. So we got today's and one more before we wrap up season 1. We're actually pretty excited. We had to take the week off last week due to some technical issues, mainly being I got a new PC courtesy of HB Customs. Maybe sometime we'll do a deep dive into that. But it's actually a good thing because we ended up with a lot more to cover today. So I know we're going to dig into stuff that happened at Twitch over the last week. Both of us have taken a peek at New World, and both of us have jumped into Battlefield 2042. So lots of different stuff. We'll see where it takes us. But I think first off, let's talk about the Twitch breach. Uh,
Man, what
what
a
a morning to wake up. That was fun.
I can't imagine being on that list and just having all of that shout out. And I know we saw some of the Twitch streamers making memes out of it and kind of poking fun at it. And then you also had some on the other spectrum that were completely upset over the fact that this was being leaked. Because I guess I can see it both ways, where some people are like, hey, my subs are literally public to everybody. And maybe they show, like, I know Nick Merckx and will show his number of subs that he has under his camera, so people know how many subs. If they just, the math between tier 1, 2, and 3 obviously may not be there, but it gives you a rough estimate on what they're making. So I can understand that side of the spectrum. On the other side, if people are trying to keep it more personal, then I would be upset too in that case.
Yeah. No, it's the things that came out to me first. I saw that happen. I caught it on Twitter as well, and before digging in, I started laughing. I mean, I think that's my general response to any chaos that happens with Twitch. And first and foremost, this is just another situation. It's just more complex even than the hate raid discussion we continue to have, which is the broad community we're a part of is so easily manipulated and fuel dumped on the fire of outrage. And I'm not even saying the outrage is good or bad or should be there, but it's so freaking predictable. And so this thing happens, and I'm kind of similar to when people drop docs on WikiLeaks, or this is similar to, can't remember what it was, but it was probably 5-6 years ago when all the documentation got dropped for a bunch of wealthy people with their like Cayman Islands bank accounts. And naturally people are freaking out because a lot of that's kind of private, but the general idea of like people that earn money having money is not new. And so I started digging into the comments because that's where we get the popcorn out for. And I'd say the ones that talk about the positive ones first. Like, I love the fact that Critical Role was at the top of that, earnings list for what was it, like 2.5 years? That $9-some-odd million. And they've had a lot of commentary against that, and that's actually very small if you think about it. They have a staff of something like 40 people. And yeah, that's only one revenue channel, but that's pretty. That's pretty conservative amount of money for that type of organization producing that quality of content. And I think a lot of people overlook it. You kind of work down the list, and like you said, some of the creators are like, well, just take my sub count, multiply it by somewhere between 2.5 and 3.5, and you can figure out the earnings. But then you had people like Hassan, and I love this. This is like one of the only areas we ever really touch politics. I'll say that with a warning here on this podcast. But he's a very vocal, like, anti-capitalist, socialist type of person, and that's what his community looks at him for, from my understanding. And when they all figure out he makes $250,000 a year, I was just shocked at the commentary. It was so freaking hilarious because, like, oh, wait a second. When we give somebody money, they get money. When other people give them money, and we have this big community, like, they get money, and then it became if he could just give $200,000 of that away a month, and he'd still be making more than the average person in the United States every single month. And so it just starts these stupid conversations that I'd circle back and kind of conclude, this is supposed to be fun. Play games, have fun. If you want to stream, have fun. If you want to watch it, let the people have fun. If you want to subscribe, let them make money. But all in all, naturally Twitch kind of put their foot in their mouth by how they communicated it, and it's just a mess.
Yeah, just sticking to Twitter was one of the critiques I saw where not everybody's on Twitter, which is a very fair assessment. And I think that Twitter is a go to for a lot of social media, uh, I guess, accounts in general, where they think, hey, we'll just blast this out because everybody can get the notification as soon as possible. But again, yeah, I saw the comment of, I don't know why they didn't send an email out, which is a good point that they didn't send on out, right away when this was happening. I think that definitely would have been a good way of notifying people on the mass
Mhm.
scale. But to your point as well, one of the things that I saw as well in comment sections on Twitter were people complaining about how much some people make. And it almost brought me back to almost like that, oh, you're a sellout. You're making money on YouTube now. You're a sellout way early in like the early, uh, or like 2008, 2009 timeframe where people were just starting to really make monetary gains on YouTube. And people were seeing that as a negative, even though these people don't really realize on the other side, they're just watching the entertainment. They're not seeing all the behind the scenes stuff, what it takes to make that stuff. Just
Yeah.
like with Critical, obviously doing an insane amount of work behind the scenes that we don't see. We just see the end product. So those things like that I found interesting that people don't really get to see behind the veil all the time. They just see what's in front of them. And that's what can be frustrating as well, being in content creation, is that not a lot of people understand the things that you're doing that could be taking hours and hours of time in your day just for people to say, oh, he doesn't deserve to make this much money. That's not fair. They're not putting the time in like I am in my 9 to 5.
Yeah.
That was also an interesting comment that I had seen running around on Twitter as well.
Yeah. It's just such a bizarre reaction from the individual viewer, the individual commentator, right? So if, you see somebody that's on there and you watch them, why are you commenting? Like, it doesn't matter what they make, right? If you're not subscribed, good for you. Somebody else is paying for your experience. If you are, well, you're getting your money's worth. It doesn't matter if another million people are subscribed.
Right.
Like, it literally does not, like, sorry, your opinion does not matter.
Yeah.
Like, it really doesn't. And I say that with love. Like, there's so many things to get upset about. That's not one of them. But yeah, you're right. It's just that it's just another one of these areas where there's this lack of understanding. And I think more of it has to do with portions of kind of the up and coming streamer community having frustrations and dare I say jealousy in some cases, because it it's possible even that an up and comer is spending the exact same amount of time as somebody towards the top of that list, but circumstances made it so that person at the top of the list is there, and a lot of it's because those folks have been around for numerous more years than others, and there's a bit of a first to market advantage that happens
Mhm.
for those. So, and then the other thing I noticed too is you see even with like the month before Tim the Tapman left for YouTube, or even Dr. Lupo. I mean, they're up there at the top. So to me, it's less of a commentary of how much money and more just kind of looking at those different factors that exist in the marketplace and saying, huh, that's interesting. They were making a bunch of money, but they didn't like, I wouldn't say the amount, but they didn't care for the type of work required to make that money in a community that, happens to have Twitch trying to, somehow mitigate these constant risk. Because even with them, and I think too, your point in you reading that some people said they should have sent out an email and not just been on Twitter. There's some truth to that. I think so. And if they were functioning like any other software company that had a data breach, that's what you would do straight up. You would send the second you know about it. But Twitch community is not that direct, not that straightforward. Like, you can't just say we had a data breach. You have to have data. Otherwise, suddenly the conspiracy theories start popping up and you end up with a bigger problem than you started with. And so I'd arguably say, as dumb as it sounds, you're better off to be late to the game with a notification just so you can mitigate whatever the heck that the community is going to end up saying.
No, that's a good point that you bring up too that I hadn't really thought of until now, is that with the idea that we get information so quickly nowadays, people were demanding answers for what happened. And maybe that's why, I mean, I know they just said, hey, it happened. We're working it through. That's all we're going to say for now. Probably was the right idea. in what they're doing just so they can get more information. But I think the flip side, when we're looking at uh, the creator or the person that is the viewership in general, just the, I guess, Twitch community is going to demand answers right away, because that's how we get news nowadays. Is it's
Yep.
snappy, it's quick, it's fast, it's that instant gratification that we get rather than waiting for all of the answers to come out. I've been watching a lot of South Park lately, and
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
this episode where they talk about it's basically reporters, and it was hilarious because this reporter on there is saying all this just insane stuff, and the guy back in the office that's asking him how things are down on the ground are going, he says, that all actually happened? He's like, no, that's actually what we're just reporting. And it's true, because it seems like there's a lot of stories that just break and they have partial news and they just kind of run with it to go with it. And I know I'm getting a little off topic, but it's just kind of the idea that we have where even if there's partial information that we have, just push that out, because it seems like within society
Yeah.
right now, people would rather just have the partial broken information rather than having the full story out.
Yeah, as they say, even the broader media, it's right now the trend is you'd rather be first than right.
Right.
And I think that's an issue. And I mean, video game journalism gets thrown under the bus constantly, and really rightfully so the majority of the time. And I think it's that. But you and I and everybody else are just as big of a part of that problem, because we do. It's like, where's the information? I want it now, while failing to realize, similar again, coming back to solving this, the potential security issues behind, say, these hate raids. Nothing's that simple. And even admittedly, a solution to these problems that might work for you, it could work for you. That's true. You're the magical idea. It's going to solve everything, but that doesn't mean it even works for half of the broader content creator community. So we'll see what comes out of it. I mean, there was one of the folks in the community you and I are both a part of was kind of commenting on this in one of our Discord chats recently, and you got a lot of people that say, "Well, this is just another reason why more people are going to leave Twitch." And I thought his observation was kind of interesting. He said, "It's not going to YouTube, even though we keep talking about the pros and cons of YouTube and Facebook gaming. It's not a 1-to-1. It's not like a sideways switch for most people, especially up and comer, the kind of the amateur streamer that just wants to do it because it's fun, but figure out how to kind of grow. There's really no incentive for them to go to Facebook gaming or over to YouTube, because there is more work at that level to be seen. And Twitch has a lot of built-in things that it solves the problem. But
Yeah.
what he pointed out is, he said, no, not everybody's gonna leave. What's more likely to happen is, over time, Twitch keeps just having dumb stuff like this happen, whether it's things kind of out, theoretically outside their control like this, or just how they attempt to approach more challenging issues. And there's going to be a slow bleed. It's more likely that, which is actually better for those who stick around, they're not going to drive people off their platform to a competitor. It's just the amount of streamers is going to decline over time. So, if you're somebody listening and you're really focused on being successful, I would say that's actually a hopeful thing to think about. I know you don't want to, because we all want to think that the whole bleed purple, big, happy Twitch family is like the way to be, but it's still a competitive marketplace. And there right now is a the percentage of creators against the percentage of viewers is somewhat, I think, it's not where it needs to be. It's there's too many creators right now. And I think, as post pandemic, things open up and people have to look at other alternatives, that'll sort it out. But I think Twitch will help that along the way by continuing to make missteps.
Yeah, I agree. And I didn't think about this. And I know we didn't talk about this before, but this just reminded me. I don't know if you saw the Twitch boosting program that they have been
Oh yeah.
releasing, but they have, if for those of you that are unaware, they're planning on in December releasing to specific creators where they will allow viewers or people part of your community to donate money to then push your viewer or your account and channel onto the recommended page more than, say, a different account. So what that would do is, I think it's certain partners and some affiliates will be invited to this program around December timeframe, and they're going to be doing a test run on it to see how it goes. And it's not going to be necessarily the big recommended page for the overall. From my understanding, it is what is recommended for the type of people that you watch. So let's say I'm playing Call of Duty Warzone and I'm only playing Call of Duty Warzone, and you are a viewer who watches a lot of Warzone, then I get boosted from my viewers. They will then push that channel, Twitch will, towards you who likes Warzone content rather than it just being on the front page. That's my understanding of it right now. And so I found it interesting because there's a lot of people that don't seem to be really happy about this program. And I kind of brought it up to some of my moderators and some people within my community and just say, and I was talking it over with my wife, and we were thinking, what is stopping somebody from making a second account and they have money to blow, let's say, and they could just boost their account with a second account on the side, because I doubt they'll have an IP address blocker because they're going to want to make as much money as possible on this, if I had to assume. So who's stopping somebody who's got the money to burn that really wants to make it and blow past some of the people who have been maybe grinding for years,
And what's wrong with that?
Well, and that's the thing, right? Yeah. That's the thing. That's the question is, what is it that people are looking at? Are you looking at, and as we're talking about that slow bleed, is this going to push people off of Twitch's platform as well? Because maybe there's people who, it really is survival of the fittest at that point, because while Twitch is going to do what Twitch wants to do and what Twitch is going to do to make as much money as possible with this program, they're going to do it. And they have enough creators to back that, where if people decide to leave the platform, it's no, skin off their nose. They're not going to care at the end of the day, unfortunately, because it's a business, like we've kind of been talking about. Exactly. But at the end of the day as well, like from my perspective as a creator myself and on Twitch, it is frustrating because I'm thinking I started, December of 2019, and I've been putting a lot of time in. And for, let's say, somebody that were to come in and just had the money that they wanted to dump into this and do it, and they could maybe surpass me just based off of being on the recommended page more than me, that's definitely a frustration. And I can share that with a lot of people that are frustrated with this becoming a possibility. But at the end of the day, I also understand that Twitch is going to do what Twitch wants to do, and they have their business and practices that they're going to do at the end of the day. So,
yeah. Well, I also think too, it gets forgotten in this community how economics and business works. You as a streamer are a business. Mm-hmm. I think that's something everybody likes to pretend. And we've used it's like the whole sellout thing. You mentioned the YouTube, or you can go back to, especially in the 90s, music acts like making it big. And it was like, well, if you make it big, you sell out. It's like, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Not that you're doing music for the money in most cases, but without it, you can't continue to spread, your craft, your creativity. And, and if you look at yourself, or, a streamer looks at themselves as a business, well, what does a business do? A market. Marketing's not just the simplicity of automatic tweets and whatnot. Like, some people can do more guerrilla style marketing or grind harder than others, and other people can invest money in it. And it doesn't make it so it's just pure pay to play, because I think that's way too of a myopic way of looking at the economics of it. But to be honest with you, I am shocked that it's taken this long for Twitch to have this. Like, this stuff is early social media, because Twitch is a social media platform. And everything else has the ability to make an ad, highlight, boost. YouTube has elements of it that can do the same thing, and you can pay for it. You can make advertisements. Twitch has never had that. And so it's smart on their part from a business perspective, but I'd almost counter, again, there's going to be a portion of the long tail of the creator community is not going to like this. But I would actually say to anybody that's serious about long-term being successful, this is advantageous, because it means there's going to be algorithms at play. It means that when you look at potential sponsorship opportunities, part of that sponsorship could be getting money to be able to get boosts, because then it's good for you and it's good for the sponsor. So it creates more of a different type of work, which again, I know can be frustrating to some people, but in the most simplistic terms, it like the fact that it took this long to get this is unbelievable. So it's of course it's going to exist. It's not going to get shut down. If Twitch shuts this down, they're stupid. But I would look at it not from a, well, I don't have the money to get this, and go, well, actually, now I have the opportunity that if I can have money, or, I have this extra dynamic to increase my visibility, because there's no way to do it. And, there's other ways that, you've probably seen some of the articles about this where, you've got people that now are creating, their own landing pages and just having Twitch embedded in it and doing a better job with like data capture to go one to one. Another topic we've talked about for a long time, being able to send out newsletters or be able to directly communicate with viewers. And not that you can directly communicate with viewers with like this boosting, but it gives more power. Yes, power costs money. That's how the world works, but it gives more power to the creator to have more control and differentiate in a giant sea of a bunch of people just grinding, for the exact same thing with really no understanding, not of, of the fault of the streamer, but no understanding of how on earth you actually get featured or recommended in the Twitch algorithm.
Right. And the other thing too to think about is that the more that you're on the platform and the more that you are advantageous in working towards figuring out what your algorithm will be, aka, am I going to stick to more of an RPG game? Am I going to stick to an FPS type of strategy? That seems to be boosting you towards just natural recommendation rather than this program, obviously, that we're talking about now, because I've seen that has been advantageous too. So there are different ways that just naturally you can get put on the page. But I guess from my perspective, where I'm coming from is mainly just seeing it as, if you have somebody who maybe wants to get started doing this, I think starting now, like let's say they start December of this year, that's going to be very challenging for them if they are doing this as maybe a side piece where they're not making a lot of money. Is mainly, I guess, the idea that I'm seeing from a lot of people on Twitter that are talking about this, is that's their concern, is that the new creators that are coming in, or the smaller creators that have maybe just gotten a start, are going to be over flooded. And then we're looking at, what is it going to look like for the partners? Are the partners going to just, with their with the money that they have, if they were to go towards that marketing aspect, which obviously we know they do, it just depends on where it goes. And we know that Twitch automatically will boost the partnered program or the partnered streamers overall in general. So it makes you think, what happens when the partnered streamers maybe start to utilize this more? Are they going to get pushed significantly over the affiliates and things like that? So those are like the questions that people have. And in Twitch's statement, they say that they're going to keep in mind viewership, subscribers, followers, and things like that. And that's all great and fine. But at the end of the day, what is going to happen? You can tell me everything that you're going to do, but in practice, that's what we really need to see. And that's kind of what we see in games that are coming out too, where we get promised like things in New World or things in Battlefield, and we try those things out, and then they were just maybe words, but they didn't actually come to fruition in the full release of these games that come out.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, good handoff to the other stuff we want to chat about. What are we going to start with? New World or Battlefield? I'll leave that one to you.
Let's start with New World. I say let's jump into New World. Yeah. So you played it, right? You jumped into it, and how was your time jumping into New World?
I'm mixed. I mean, I'll start with the end in mind. So I uninstalled it. I probably played it for 40 or 45 hours, somewhere thereabouts. I found that there's a few things. So number one, for me, the story is non-existent, absolutely non-existent, not interesting at all. And it's odd. And I wouldn't say that initially detracted, but I had no desire to listen to or read any dialogue, which, even when we play the Skyrims and the Fallouts and stuff like that, like we click through it quickly, but at least we're sort of kind of having a pulse on what's going on. I'll be honest with you, I have no freaking idea why we are where we are in New World. It didn't matter. And so I jump in. Um, you go through some tutorial, you wash up on the beach, I suppose, and you got to do some stuff. And then I start immediately getting addicted to resource gathering because I'm trained to think that way, in my case, through World of Warcraft. And the problem, though, was again, it's that constant question: why? Why do I need these resources? And as you get to some of the larger cities, like there's obviously some crafting. There, one of the things that New World touts as kind of its own set of features is how the different factions and companies in these cities can grow by collectively like contributing to it through various quests or missions. And so I understood that, but it still seemed so gosh darn mindless. And then the other piece of it, and sometimes it takes time to mature when it comes to these resources, is the in-game economy. And in-game economies in general across all games have been diminishing over time, and it's almost the opposite reaction of what we were talking about with Twitch. But a lot of the larger parts of the community don't like that the economy itself is kind of gamified inadvertently, driven by the community that plays the game. But I wasn't seeing a clear way to intelligently even resell resources because there's no understanding of value and things like how fast you level and the types of weapons and armor and all this. Like it just seemed incredibly overpowered. And so again, I kept logging in every single day and I thought it was kind of cool. It was kind of a comforting game. And mind you, again, this is the first game I really jumped in. I've got like one of those 49-inch Samsung widescreen monitors. I've got my new 3080. Like it was pretty, but it didn't really have any like wow moments visually because it just looks like a nice forest, like in anywhere else. And I know there's different areas of the map, but it wasn't the same thought of like when you go around in World of Warcraft, you think about the different releases, and there's like certain areas where you're like, holy crap, this is incredible. Or other games that even looking at the Fallout or Skyrim, like it's just a much more complex area. Whereas this one is just a whole bunch of weird tunes that look similar to each other because you're all humans running around addicted to resource gathering. The quests don't really mean anything. And then the last thing I'd say, and I'd love to hear kind of some of your commentary, is I thought the idea behind the companies and how you take over these different areas is great. Idea is fantastic. And I know there was a lot of concerns about how, especially again in the content creator community, these individuals would have the ability to control massive amounts of people to essentially go, Zerg and take over areas. Yeah, that happened. So much so that like the server that I was initially in, and a lot of again our communities in, is now waiting to leave and do the server swap because this one creator, and it's fine. Like this dynamic exists. There's no reason to get upset at them. This creator has like a 2,500 person army all on the same server, and I think they're under the covenant. They took over the entire map, and as it stands now, there is a 0% chance that anything else could be taken by Syndicate, the Marauders. It's impossible. And so it basically killed off the game for everybody because in PvP you're going to get wrecked due to the lopsidedness. But then because of if you're in the faction that owns something, you get massive discounts, less taxes, it costs less to travel. Like basically the game's easier for you. And if you don't own it, you pay more taxes. You're dinged. And so there's no safe haven to go. So early on the first few days, at least you could go, like if you're Marauders, you could go find a Marauder city and just, go work around that zone to level up. And now those don't exist anymore. And so it's just kind of weird. But what made me uninstall it completely, not an upset way, and I wouldn't even say I'll not pick it up again, but I was playing for like 2 hours and I realized I'm just literally doing this mindless loop of collecting resources for no reason other than collecting resources. I wasn't trying to craft a certain type of armor. I'm not trying to level up. All the weapons and armor are way overpowered right now, which is fine. Um, and I didn't care what the quests were. It's just a normal type of quest. Go to this area, collect these things. Go to this area, kill these things. So I was doing that, and then I happened upon a quest that like led me to an elite area that I guess would kind of classify as, I guess through normal kind of MMO terminology, a non-instanced dungeon is what I would kind of call it. So it's all high-level elite things, but I think like I had a group of what are like a team of squad of 5 or whatever. There's probably 10 other people in this area, and it's just a freaking free for all because it's a click. It's like a, it's not like a tab attack game like a World of Warcraft. It's just clicking around like a madman. And so I was just like, hey, I'm glad other people like it. Don't get me wrong. And I mean, I'm the first person to say like there's always an audience for something, and I love the fact that people love it. But for me, um, it was just pointless and didn't scratch any itch. And then when I saw that content of how kind of the higher level stuff works, I was like, this is just dumb. Like it doesn't make any sense how it's working. The fact that you can have 15 people running through here and the mobs are constantly respawning behind you too. It's not like it clears out like it does in a normal instance dungeon. So we'll see what happens. I'm very curious what the player count looks like in a couple weeks, because we're still sitting inside of the initial hype, and some people got a little bit frustrated with that dynamic I'd mentioned about the areas being taken over and kind of seeing that come to be, and they're hanging on to, as soon as we can do the server switch, we'll all switch together. But I'm convinced there's so much of the gaming community in New World that's waiting for that to happen that it's just going to punt that same problem to another server. And I don't know if the development team was really thinking this through, because you're not going to do a reset. They're not going to have a there's no seasons. It's not a subscription service. Like, how are you going to get it back to a point where the cool concept of having these different factions and competing against each other for land is balanced from time to time so that you're not running people off?
Man, that's fascinating, because what's fascinating is that I didn't pick the game up, but I was watching a lot of people play it because I wanted to get an idea of, is this a game that I want to get into? Because I've been very hesitant to get involved with MMORPGs again. I've found that when I try and pick ones up like ESO or Final Fantasy, I always just compare it to WoW, because WoW is such a big like nostalgia factor for me. And in my head, while there's a lot of changes they've made to the game recently that I'm not a fan of, and why I haven't been playing it lately, it's still in my head like this is the greatest MMO, and that's the way I view it. So it's hard for me to get into other MMOs, I think, because of that. So I guess to the viewers, if you're watching this and you're wondering where I'm coming from, that's where I'm coming from basically. So when I was looking at the game, I had a couple of friends that kept asking me like, hey, are you going to get New World? Are you going to get New World? And I was like, I really need to watch more on it before I jump full into this game. So I was watching a lot of streamers. I was watching pretty much everyone you could think of that maybe was a little bit bigger name. So I was watching Shroud for a little bit, just kind of see, what Shroud, because Shroud came up playing World of Warcraft and he had played a lot of MMOs. So I wanted to see what his opinion on the game was. And one of the things that he said I thought was interesting. He said, the game is very easy to understand from a viewership perspective and somebody that's playing the game. You have weapon systems or things that people are using in the game that people can understand. This is a sword. This is a bow, a gun, things like that. Everybody understands the intent behind those different types of weapons, right? It's very easy to kind of look at and understand, as well as I'm looking at a human. Now, put that against a game like World of Warcraft, where someone is playing as a Night Elf or a Draenei, and you're looking at that as an outside perspective, never seen the game before, and you're like, what is this? What is that thing? It has a giant tail. What is that? Or with Final Fantasy, with people dressing up as cats, people may see that as what's going on with the game, versus it's very easy to understand, the point A and point B, at least from the character and the weapon perspective in New World. And I thought that was an interesting idea, because that, I think, shows a little bit in what New World's idea of trying to pull in the masses was to make it relatable right off the bat for the majority of the consumer. And a lot of people seem to be enjoying it, and there's a lot of people that don't seem to be enjoying it. It seems to be like uh, a lot of it is very much in between, where I've seen a lot of people are just kind of playing it because it's the new thing, but there's a lot of gripes that they have, and one of them being the PvP system I've heard as well, where the entire map is taken over, and what do people do? Like, do they
Yeah.
just kind of deal with it and just suck it up, or do they hope for the server switch, or do they just quit? And so, yeah, I'm really curious to see a lot of games nowadays too, especially with these releases, what the peaks and valleys look like, how harsh are they when they cut off, and I guess we'll kind of see that, like you said, in the next couple of weeks as we get a little bit closer to maybe the honeymoon phase falling
Yeah.
off.
When you mentioned that even the whole PvP side of things, that was odd. Like I never flagged myself for PvP while I was playing. I think I got up to like level 25 or something before I said, that's enough for now. Um, it it just I don't know, it didn't feel right. Whereas again, I'm like you, I compare everything to WoW, and you've got these PvP zones in WoW, or there's just certain expectations built into a game that's been around for a long time. Like in these areas, everybody knows you PvP. In these other areas, you kind of don't bother people unless you're just being a pain in the ass, and that's also okay. Whereas New World, like those rules are certainly not set, but also because of where you start, because everybody starts out the same. There's no, again, we're going to use the WoW paradigm because it's what we're both used to, but it's like you've got Horde and Alliance. You start in two completely separate areas. You have similar quest chains, but those areas initially are exclusive to Horde and Alliance. And as some of the more recent releases came out, they got even more exclusive. Like you can't go to them if you're the other side. Um, but it helped build this connection to those, right? To the point of where, I mean, people in real life yelling for the horde or whatever the heck. People that, I mean, I don't know. Did you even graduate school if you're Alliance? I'm not sure. But it's one of those things where that that pull is there. It has you. It sucks you in. You feel like you're a part of something, even though yeah, we're Taurens and we're orcs and we're all these different kind of fantasy creatures, or you can be a human. Um, but the new world, everybody washes up. I think I was kind of drawing a conclusion on this. You kind of wash up on different shores, but you're still just you. You're kind of unaffiliated until you get a little bit further in, and then you're selecting from one of these factions. But the factions all exist in the same place. So it'd be like having, one of those like Dalaran or something where everybody can come and be in that, but that's every city. Except in New World, be like Dalaran being run by one, faction. Like right now it's the Alliance time, and while the Horde can still be there, they're gonna have to pay extra for stuff. They're gonna have to pay a tax to do crafting in the city, those type of things. And again, I think that's a cool dynamic to add on paper, and maybe there's a way that they can smooth it out. Um, but it just made it so there was no real stickiness to it. And then again, you kind of look at the heavy similarity of the places where you're running around. Whereas again, you look at other MMOs, there's a lot more varied environments and varied mobs. This is the same exact stuff over and over and over and over again. It's just they have varying extra levels of defense or offense or attack. And that was like that kind of dungeony elite place I went to. That was just the same exact skins as the stuff just outside of it. They just hit harder. You need to hit them more. So again, I'm not like, again, anybody enjoying it, that's great. Like I genuinely, like I want to. I am searching, and I think kind of the point that's just not going to happen in my lifetime. Because our experience or what we think the pinnacle can't be relived. That's not possible. Um, but it's just more. It just kind of sucks in my opinion. Like I wish I could enjoy it. Or even if some, I know I'm not the only one that was addicted to resource gathering. I've saw entire streams dedicated to going and chopping down trees. um but I wish there was more to understanding the point of doing that other than, okay, I'm leveling up my woodworking. being able to craft things and actually have like a viable economy that makes sense. But there's no reason to really buy anything other than to craft stuff to finish a quest, which then just gives you more, like I just I don't know. It doesn't seem completely thought through as far as kind of an initial release.
Yeah, and I know that they were really trying to work on the end game for quite some time. I know in their beta and alpha development phases, a lot of people were talking about how they had to redo their end game multiple times because of kind of wanting to understand the development and direction that they wanted to go into, and they're still kind of struggling with that as well. So I guess we'll see in the next couple weeks here
Absolutely.
what happens here. But I guess to shift things into the next, looking at Battlefield 2042. Obviously,
Yeah.
those who pre-ordered the game had access to the beta starting on Wednesday the 6th, and as of today, it is open beta. So for those of you that are wanting to get your hands on it, you were able to download that through, I believe, either Steam or Origin if you're on PC, and then obviously on the console stores for PlayStation and Xbox.
Yeah, one thing to kind of plant in everybody's ear: if you're on Xbox and you have Game Pass, this is another one of those examples where you could be part of the early access beta, and most Game Pass people didn't even know that. This is both on Xbox and on PC, and I mean we had friends in our community that were grouchy because they didn't think they were going to start playing until today, and thankfully we had other people looking out for them that said, "No, just you have Game Pass, right? Yeah, all right, cool, do it, download it," and they were able to hop in. So another one of those just amazing benefits about Game Pass, and
Mhm.
as they've extended that into the PC side, it's wonderful. But yeah, I know you got. I mean, both of us got some hands on, and just almost the opposite of New World. There's lots that I would like to be different, but it's beta, and it's a it's a decent Battlefield experience. I'm pretty excited for it to come out in November.
Yeah, I agree. I give it probably like a 7 out of 10 right now is what I would say, like a solid 7. I The only thing that I had really issues with was performance. I was running into a lot of issues, and I'm running a i7 9700K and 2080 Ti, 32 gigs of RAM, and I was having a lot of issues. And this is even without streaming. I didn't have any stream going when I was doing some gameplay, and then while streaming as well, it seemed to get even worse. So I think if performance would have been a bit better on that side, I think I would have enjoyed it a little bit more. But I mean, overall, yeah, I would say it's a solid game. I know we keep using the word cautiously optimistic, but it's true. Like, I really am cautiously optimistic because I just there have been a lot of times where I've been burned by EA, and a lot of people have been burned from some of the games that EA has been, I guess, a part of. And after Battlefield 5's initial release and with Star Wars Battlefront 2, I'm very much a little apprehensive, but I'm still excited because I know a lot of people are looking forward to a modern day uh, Battlefield game. And one of the things that I've been doing recently, as far as like my YouTube channel goes, is I was playing a lot of Insurgency Sandstorm. And I have a lot
Mhm.
of people that are really into that game. It just released on the console. And I have a lot of people telling me that they actually canceled their pre orders, uninstalled the game after playing the Battlefield beta because they didn't like what they were experiencing from playing the game, which I thought
Mhm.
was fascinating because as a beta, we understand that yes, it is a something that is testing out the system to hopefully help the release be a lot better. But at the same time, betas, whether we like it or not, are looked at in that perspective that they are almost a demo of what the game will be. And whether people understand that or not is kind of doesn't matter at the end of the day because the perception is that it's basically I get early access to try out the game, and that's going to reflect on EA and Dice at the end of the day as well. So I don't know. I'm curious to see what numbers look like too. If people are really going to take the beta and judge it just off of the beta and not look at what the full release will be. Battlefield has always struggled on their first couple weeks of launch and game. I've been playing them since I vividly remember since Bad Company, the very first one. The servers are always very rough at the very beginning. It seems like I usually have nothing but server issues whenever I play Battlefield games, usually on launch. So I really hope that there are things like that they can hammer out, right off the bat. But I mean, 6 weeks till release. We'll see what happens in this beta. They're saying that it was a a few month old build as well. So something to
Yeah,
keep in
yeah.
mind as well.
Yeah, I'm happy. I mean, I did the pre-order. I'll definitely keep it. Yeah, I thought it was interesting you brought up Insurgency Sandstorm. I think, even when I saw the gameplay, I mean, I'm familiar with that because they're a partner with Games to Grunts. Insurgency's been on there quite a bit. When I saw that on Xbox, I this looks like a like an actual Battlefield spinoff. It's really good. Um, yeah, I think when I jumped into it, I guess my reactions, it felt right. It was like that right middle ground between what Battlefield 4's kind of player movement looked like. A little cartoony towards like Battlefield 1. I know I've talked about this in general with games. It's kind of that subtle difference between, say, Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 2019, and Cold War. It's that very, very subtle, but when you play a lot, you can see it. And it was just kind of getting reused to that. I also was quickly reminded about the period of time it takes to get used to Battlefield as far as like aiming and getting a feel for where you sit, because it's so much different than any other first person shooter. Um, it's not, it's obviously not as run and gun. Even if you're a good run and gunner, it's a different type to be able to pay attention. And you've got, all the helicopter pros from Battlefield 4, obviously been working on their skills because there's even more of them now. So that's pretty damn funny. But I thought, again, it looked good. It felt good. I mean, probably my biggest complaint, and I know I've talked about this a bit, was it, I will call it player targeting, but more from a visual perspective. And I I was kind of complaining about this, and while I was playing, but then I wanted to make sure I wasn't wrong because I was like, this seems way different than 4, or for that matter, 1 and 5. Um, and it's because, and a lot of people have probably seen some of his commentary if you've not played already, but like there's this red dot that sits above the enemy player, which is at a really bizarre location as far as like being able to aim, but also the player skins in Battlefield 2042 are very, very specific. So, like in Battlefield 4, yeah, you had like kitted up dudes, but they were kind of indistinct. They weren't really like, they're people, but not really. And you could literally change the tone of their camo, and it would change enough to make it look like different teams. Well, 2042 feels like Warzone with 4 skins right now. And that's a problem because when you're playing, I mean, what's it? 50, how many versus how many? I know it's
64
a
v
giant.
64.
Yeah, 64. When you're playing that, it doesn't make any sense. And so you have that floating red dot. You've got the fact that because of how the map is, you could literally have squad mates or teammates, but with an enemy between you two, but they could be the same exact skin. There's no differentiation whatsoever. And that, I think, is a problem. And I'm the first to say, because I don't want this to be misunderstood, I could care less about actual visibility. And as I said to you, like if some dude's pot shotting me from a bush, like that's on me. And if I can't see them, that's on me. But when I can actually see them and my brain's going, number one, that red dot makes me aim way higher because of where it is in relation to them with every other game in existence, A. But then B, it looks exactly like me, and there's not enough differentiation in the skins to where, like, again, Call of Duty takes it way to an extreme. There's not enough variation to where like you don't see anything anymore. It just makes it difficult to get used to that concept of, if you see something, shoot something.
Yeah, and I think that what Modern Warfare 19 did really well, at least for the actual PvP, or I guess multiplayer, sorry, aspect rather than the war zone, is the fact that they had operators that were locked to each specific faction. So if you were playing on one faction, it just took you time to learn what each faction and operators were for that specific faction. And then once you figured that out, it was very easy to differentiate. Even though with the smaller maps, it's a lot easier to kind of differentiate between a friendly and an enemy in those games. It's still, I was finding the exact same things that you were finding in 2042 that I know we looked at some Battlefield 4 footage right before we started just to kind of see what did they do
Yeah.
again to see what was the targeting look like, and we saw they had a red bar above their name to show their health, and then it had a little red triangle and then their name. So it was a lot of information, but it helped you realize where the enemies were, and it was right above their head rather than that red dot that we're seeing in Battlefield 2042 being, like you said, kind of a little bit further up than what we were used to in previous games. And I
Yeah.
also played Battlefield 5 for about 3 hours the night before I started playing 2042, just so that I could compare it to when I jumped into 2042 and how it compared. And it definitely feels like a world difference as far as gameplay goes. Even
But
just, it's hard to judge too based off of what we were given. Like try to keep that in mind. Like weapon systems, there's only what four or two that we were able to
yeah.
unlock, and then there was one for each specific class. So not a lot to go off of for that. But I mean, uh, I like I said, I just to finish my thoughts, just cautiously optimistic. I hope they do good because so many people are looking for more of that modern era Battlefield, and
Yeah.
I guess we'll see what ends up coming out
Hey,
from it.
I'm in. As I said, as much as anything. The only thing is if at launch, no, I mean, let's get real. I pre-ordered and I have no reason to cancel. But
Right.
if suddenly, final stand esque hover tanks and railguns appear, that's the only thing that'll take me over the edge. But I, my guess is they're going to solve the whole skin issue. Because I was just while we were chatting here, I was pulling up that's one of the more common complaints, actually constructive complaints. A lot of people from the Battlefield community are saying, and I'm looking at something that's a whole bunch of side by sides and everything, even within Battlefield One, there's enough of a variation between each side. It happens, or like in the other battlefields, you've got the Chinese, the Russians, and the Americans. But even the old ones, like it was more common to have the players' faces covered because they were indistinct. There's no reason to be a named specialist, and I think that might have been a misstep, especially with no campaign. Like if there was a campaign, I get it, but there's no campaign. So what's the point of these specialists? And I'm sure I'll get lit up for this, but it looks like one of the skins might have been influenced by watching Narnia and the White Queen. It's it's silly to me. So I hope they worry less about that and just get it to a point like we don't need to buy and go the same route as all the other FPSs that exist where we're buying crazy skins. I mean, I spent thousands of dollars in Warzone on them. And stupid. I know they're just cosmetic. I've never had the desire to do that in Battlefield because Battlefield's not that type of arcade game to where it's funny to go wear a bunny suit and start killing people. Like it's just not how it works. But um, it's also kind of challenging too. I mean, we're talking with this particular map at launch. It's very expansive, which is great. So you get to play with a lot of the terrain. I'll say too, like the truck vehicles, those drive pretty well. There's obviously some kind of visual glitches they're working on, and I definitely drive around trying to like create problems because I think one of the greatest things about Battlefield 4 was some of the glitches. Um, but it's tough because I remember back to the Battlefield 4 beta, which was on Shanghai. I mean, that's an urban setting, and that is massively different than a whole bunch of hills and rocks and the rocket launch pad and this tall building and this different stuff. Um, and refreshingly, and it'll change, I'm sure, but like snipers are not out in full force. I'm happy with that. I don't know what happened, and I don't care if you want to be a camper. I don't if it's 50v50 snipers versus snipers, like cool. Um, I was shocked. I mean, I played 2 rounds before I even saw the glint of a rifle, and that was while I was literally just running around on the map, just looking at the map. So I was a fair game for anybody, and I wasn't even hearing bullets whiz by. So, well, we'll see what happens. They've got some time. Obviously, we'll see what happens in open beta. I mean, I was looking at numbers. They're real healthy at launch just on Steam with a few 100,000 people playing, and that didn't even include Epic and Origin and all the other platforms. So hopefully, EA is able to capture whatever data they need to make any adjustments. But with certainty, we'll have a massive day one update. We'll probably have another massive update within the first couple weeks. Um, because they're smart. I also trust the team that's on Battlefield this team way more than I have a lot of the other EA teams, and hopefully they'll keep us busy for a bit.
Yeah, I truly, truly hope so. But so I think maybe one last point before we end is one of the
Yeah,
articles that we were kind of looking at and how the number of games that came out in 2021 was actually surprisingly high. And one of the things that in the article that they were kind of talking about is, what is it with this quantity over quality? Or is it, is it truly that we are getting some quality games? And I think to the point that we have brought up multiple times on this podcast is the fact that what games are coming out is the question that we kept having, especially like in 2021. And to my surprise, there actually are a lot of games coming out. However, they aren't really those big AAA developed games that, everybody gets hyped up for. And so curious what your thoughts were when you were kind of looking into that article.
yeah. I think again, I use that concept, and maybe I haven't explained too much about the whole long tail, and that's just content in general. Long tail says you've got a lot of people participating in a small amount of things. So that means popular music, popular games, popular movies. But because of content being relatively low cost to make and low cost to distribute, you have this long tail. So there's tons of stuff available. Like Netflix in and of itself is this example. They don't need tons of people to exist towards the end. So you end up with lots and lots of stuff with fewer and fewer people interacting with it. But that doesn't mean it's good or bad. It just is because again, the cost or the barrier to entry is a lot lower. So it makes sense. And then even taking this in context, I was looking at things like the game 12 minutes, which I've not played. Great concept. You're reliving this loop of things. And it was actually apparently on a lot of most anticipated games of 2021, even though you and I had not heard about it until it launched. But there's a lot of that kind of stuff. Even things like, Psychonauts 2, some of these games that are like kind of that mid tier, or I mean, I'll call them like fake indie studios, not to put them down, but it like somebody like Tiny Build is a publisher. I mean, they're considered indie, but not really. I mean, they're not indie. They're well funded. They publish a ton of stuff. They develop some of their own stuff. And I think really the driver for this conversation about there's nothing to play, it's so you and I, and certainly skewing older, are comparing it against the excitement around new AAA games. And simultaneously, and this was another thing you and I caught with this, things like Ubisoft's, rinse and repeat model behind Far Cry or Assassin's Creed. It's beyond stale at this point, and it's getting excited about these, indie or these mid-level or low-level games or episodic games that you might only play for 8 hours and be done with it. And we're just not used to that. We're used to pouring 100, 500, 1,000 hours into something. And that's just not where that's not where the space is anymore.
Yeah, and what we're seeing as well, just in general from comments that I'm seeing across social media, is like even games like Call of Duty. When I noticed a lot of people after Cold War was launched and after the honeymoon phase was over, it took a lot of time, I think, for a lot of people to be like, Modern Warfare 19 was actually like a solid game. It was actually really good. And
Yeah.
I was seeing a lot of people saying Call of Duty needs to stop releasing a game every year and they need to go because we're losing hype. We're losing hype over these games. And I think we're starting to see maybe it's because there are so many more gamers nowadays than there were before. And it's a lot more mainstream now. And the budgets that go into these games, the amount of advertising and the motion capture that they do for all of this stuff and getting real actors to be involved in them, I think it's really showing how much money these can make. And that's why we're seeing a lot more of these, big releases. But at the same time, it's interesting to see the hype every year for at least a game like Call of Duty and trying to keep that hype across the board, it seems like there's a lot of people that seem to be getting burnt out from that type of style. And from people coming into the videos for the Insurgency Sandstorm videos that are coming in, people keep commenting over and over again, getting really burnt out. And this is mainly console, remember, keep in mind. I'm getting burnt out from Call of Duty. I'm getting really burnt out from Warzone, things like that. And they're happy that there's finally, games like a tactical FPS coming to console, because console doesn't really have a whole lot of those. So I think that, moving forward, maybe console will start to get more of those tactical FPSs. Games like Hell Let Loose are coming, and maybe exposure to those type of games will allow the gaming community to maybe not be so wrapped up into the traditional games that we're seeing that get pushed every year. And we'll see some more maybe indie developed, quote unquote, as you've kind of pointed out, mid-tier development making their way into more of the mainstream. And I think that's what we really are seeing, and why we're seeing so many games coming out as well, because there are so many studios that are really making different type of content out there.
Yeah, and the same thing is like game development isn't cheap, but it's still a lot lower barrier to entry financially than it used to be. So that creates a lot of opportunities for stuff to appear. And then again, where you and I and many people have a little bit of a skewed or biased observation is, if you look over the past 15 or whatever years, 20 years, um, we can name a lot of these big launches, like remembering when you discovered Assassin's Creed, probably the second or third one in a lot of cases. Like, holy crap, this is amazing. And I mean, I remember when I discovered it, I went and played the first three of them almost back to back to back because I thought it was cool. Same thing with like Fable, Fable 2, World of Warcraft. You look at playing Call of Duty over and over the years, and that was always the thing to look forward to. Nowadays, and again, I'm kind of an extreme on this, but I've got in my Steam library something like 2,200 games, nearly all of which have never been played. I have like 400 games on my Xbox, most of which haven't been played. And a lot of those are because, sometimes I just get games, or I'll buy things that are on sale or gift cards or something. And I'm like, why not? I'd rather just have them just in case. But it makes it so it's like we're straddling, sitting in two different parts of this thought process, where it's like, I want I want to feel the next Fallout, but I know it's going to suck because it's going to be the exact same formula. And after a couple times, or, Far Cry is another one where like Far Cry 3 was amazing. Far Cry 4 was awesome. Far Cry 5 was a reskin, and I wanted to like it because I liked the idea of this kind of Americana story. But even that couldn't pull me in. And then 6, I'm looking at, I'm going, literally, this looks like 3, 4, and 5 mashed together with this cliched approach to something. And it just gets kind of goofy. And so, yeah, we have breakouts like a Division 1 or Division 2. But then you've also at the same time have Grand Theft Auto has been around, since 1910, and Red Dead Redemption's, I think, from the 1800s, and still going strong. So it's like, what's the replacement there? And so I think, like, if we really look forward to like major new interesting games, Grand Theft Auto 6 can get away with being a rinse and repeat because it's the same controls, and there's a little bit more to it. The same way, if a Red Dead Redemption 3 somehow came out, that could get away with it. But those cookie cutter Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, Call of Duty, they can't get away with it anymore because we need something new. But you and I can't even describe what we want, because what we think we want is actually exactly what we're getting, which is a reskin of what we love.
Truth, yeah. If Modern Warfare
Yeah.
19 would have just added more maps, more guns, and just kept running with the formula, like, I would have been happy
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
rather than having Cold War out. So,
Yeah.
but I feel that definitely, and that's one of the things we talked about with like sports games is, do we really want something new, or do we really just wish that there were some minor tweaks? Like, it makes it seem like we want something just completely overhauled, completely change it, take the engine away, put a new engine in. It's going to make things 100% better. But then you jump into the game and it's not familiar. Like, the familiarity is what keeps bringing people back. So
And if you look at all this stuff as storytelling at the end of the day, and if somebody's a student of literature and storytelling over the past thousands of years, there's I don't know what it is. It's like there's like 8 different types of stories that exist. That's it. Like, and you understand it. They're all every story ever told is like one of these 8 things, and it's kind of the same way with entertainment and games and movies. It is rare that a truly new movie or show or game can come out and be successful that's not very clearly riffing off or taking something that was already loved or that falls into these storylines. So yeah, I think we want new because we actually have so much. It's almost like the analysis paralysis. We have the ability to have so many different games and experiences that we can't pick any of them, and so we always want something we can't have. But I couldn't pin you down to describe it like you've said and I've said anything other than something that's already existed. And same as I wish 2019 would have the same maps. I will constantly say I wish Battlefield 4 just had new maps as well. Just update that, make it run on newer systems, increase the player count, and charge me $20 a month, and I will happily pay it. You don't even need a battle pass. just keep the servers alive.
yeah, most definitely.
So, but yeah, well, I think that about wraps up episode 9 here of the Redacted Podcast. We got the last episode coming up next week. That'll be episode 10. Got a couple things in mind for what we're going to do, but we'll kind of leave it at that, just so we don't accidentally, over promise and under deliver. But similarly, we're working on getting season 2 set up. We've got some exciting things in the works, some rebranding. We're gonna kind of have it as its own thing off to the side because it's gotten a lot of positive feedback from our partners and other creators in the space. So thanks again for watching Redacted Podcast with Glenn and Jared, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks, everybody.